Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Anna Wasasha, president of Middlesex Community College, and today we're embarking upon another one in our series of shows called Meet the Professor. And the professor we're going to meet is Professor Floridia, Adam Floridia. And when I first met you, I was very confused because I thought it was Florida.
I get that all the time.
I bet you do, yeah. I mean, I get all kinds of things with my last name too. But welcome to the show, English professor.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
A reader par excellence. You used to read 52 books a year.
Yep, I do a book a week until my second child arrived, and now I've cut it in half, so my goal is 26.
I still think
a book every other week.
That's pretty incredible. What's the last book you read?
Maybe Gone Girl. This summer I've done some light reading. I don't usually do the contemporary stuff, but I did Gone Girl and her other two novels, and because those were nice. I was in a big reading slump, so reading those nice light reads allowed me to catch up to my number and kind of plow through those, maybe like a book a day.
What's the author's name?
Gillian Flynn.
Gillian Flynn, that's right. I actually, a million years ago, had to read, Paradise Lost or something difficult. So I read The Godfather, Mario Puzo, just to get into the mode of reading, and then I was able to make the transition. It was like a warm-up, like you walk before you run.
Which surprises me because I've never read The Godfather, but I think of it as a pretty thick book in its own right. And granted, the language isn't quite Milton, but
yeah, right. The language is a lot more accessible, and there were no footnotes.
Yeah,
that's right, exactly. Did you see the film? The Gone Girl film?
I did. It was okay. The book's always better. I like the book better. And I actually liked her other two novels better than Gone Girl. I was surprised because whenever I do give in and read something that's popular today, I tend not to like it. I'm not a snooty reader. There's other stuff I enjoy. I just tend not to like the bestsellers, contemporary stuff. So I was really pleased. And then it made me pick up Girl on a Train, which I was not a fan of.
Oh,
it's not by her. It's sort of a similar genre,
but it's also on the bestseller list,
and it was another bestseller.
Yes,
yeah.
Right. So you're not
pick up Gillian Flynn. Don't pick up the other one.
Okay, good to have your recommendation. Well, if we're going to meet you, we probably have to find out where are you from?
Born and raised in Connecticut. I grew up in Wallingford, Connecticut.
Wallingford has a beautiful downtown.
They do.
Yeah.
We still go there. I live in Southington now, and I would say over the summer we would drive into Wallingford at least twice a week, myself and my children, to this little cafe downtown that's just the best Half Moon Cafe. It's great. We've been going there since my son was 8 days old. He's now 3.5. So he walks in, says, "Good morning, everybody." All the ladies come and give him a hug. He walks behind the counter, gets a cookie, and then we go to the Wallingford Public Library, which is the best library around. So we drive, again, 20 minutes, half an hour to go and do our little coffee library routine.
So what do you remember most fondly about growing up in Wallingford?
Nothing particular stands out. Regular childhood. I remember the soccer tournaments. There's a huge soccer tournament at the end of every summer. Twist, the Wallingford TW, the Wallingford Invitational Soccer Tournament, and that was a huge deal. So I remember, playing soccer growing up.
So you did, yeah. And we have pickup soccer here at Middlesex, and there's quite a lot of interest in it.
I know. There was Ben Bota mentioned it the other day, and invited people out, and I thought, if only I were in better shape, I would love to go out and play. So I'm working on the getting in shape part, and then maybe I'll look into some.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that, what I think about is how important it is to have an audience, because every sport, every musical performance, every artistic expression needs an audience, and I don't think I could chase a soccer ball around a field anymore, but I love watching it on television.
That's how I get into the World Cup when it comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, we have to take a break, and we'll be back right after this. Well, we're back. It's the Middlesex Moments radio show, Meet the Professor series. I don't remember which number this is, but Adam Floridia is my guest, Professor Adam Floridia. And we were just talking about growing up in Wallingford and playing soccer, and over the break he's been just racking his brain trying to remember what the last book was that he read.
I think I made up Gone Girl because I know I read that very recently, and I read her books, but I don't remember what the actual last one I just finished is. Because I'm 20 pages away from the ending of a book about Machu Picchu, which is really, really interesting.
A piece of fiction?
It's nonfiction. It's a reporter went and took the trip, and he followed the trail that Hiram Bingham led. He's the guy who discovered it. So he kind of follows his journey and interweaves the story with Bingham's journey, so you get that historical aspect, and then also he very seamlessly weaves in the history of Machu Picchu and the Incas and the conquistadors, and I'm liking it a lot more than I expected to. It's funny, it's got a lot of great facts in it, and it's getting me very excited for what I hope will be my wife and my summer trip coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We're planning way ahead.
Good.
Because we're going without the kids, so we're really excited.
And yes. Well, okay. We hope that the children aren't listening, even though they're little, to hear that. But that's an interesting piece about is nonfiction literature. I mean, do you teach nonfiction in your courses? And what kind of, what's the difference between it? Well, obviously, we know what the difference is between a piece of fiction, but what about the difference in the writing?
I think it's not as obvious as you would think, because it's tougher to say. Even when I taught creative writing last semester, which was a wonderful course, we did a unit on short fiction, we did a unit on poetry, and then we did a unit on creative nonfiction, where you use a lot of the same elements of literature and you tell a story, but it's still reporting or sharing a personal story or an anecdote, and it kind of blurs the line where I think everything has to be fact-based, but it's the way it's told. So I absolutely consider that literature.
Right.
Still.
I just saw an interview with Salman Rushdie, and the unfortunate story about him is the fatwa that was, for satanic verses.
Yep.
But he said he thought he's just written a new book, and he thought that the reason he felt so good about it was it was a convergence of magic and myth and storytelling with history. Because history is another way, in a way, it's a story that we explain what we've observed and experienced, and to fuse it makes a very powerful novel. So, I'm looking forward to at least reading some summaries of it, if not reading it. I find myself saying, oh, that sounds like a great book. How many pages is it?
I've done that recently, too, where there's a book on my shelf that's been there for a long time, and I want to read it, and I go, it's so long, and then I feel like, it's terrible. Like one of my students complaining, "Oh, this is too long to read," but it really is when the time is limited. Oh, I could cram 3 books in to the time that it would take me to read maybe this one book. Mm-hmm. So it takes me a while to build up. Sometimes I'll have one big book a year that I want to, like Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace or Gravity's Rainbow. I can remember the years that I read those.
And they are lengthy.
Oh yeah, 1,000 pages.
Plus. That's heavy. As
and
we
not
used
easy,
to say.
not easy reads.
Right. Well, so yes, but obviously you've read easy reads and difficult reads and long reads. So, what in your life was the making of a reader in you? Thinking back, how did you become a reader?
Great question. I remember in high school, I went to Choate in Wallingford, and I remember my English classes. The professors in any English class would talk about, the symbolism of this and that, and I personally thought it was all BS. Oh, the guy caught a clock. That's because the clock fell off the table. It's not because it represents his desire to control time. And I remember junior year reading a play called Equus, not so long ago, I think on Broadway, performed on the stage with Harry Potter,
yes, with Harry
Daniel
Potter.
Radcliffe.
Yes.
And I remember that was the first book that I really was like, oh my God, there's so much more here. And suddenly great pieces of literature became like puzzles when there was the symbolism, and you're not making stuff up, but it's discovering the sort of the secrets that the author put in there, that if you read carefully, you'll be able to piece together. And that made me really, really start to like reading.
Have you ever marveled, or shall I say, I've always marveled, what do you think about this, that people, especially before the advent of the typewriter even, were able to construct these incredibly long stories and maintain, continuity throughout of the characters and the plot?
Especially when they were serial pieces, where
Right.
like Dickens would publish these ridiculously long pieces, and they'd be published piecemeal, I don't know, 20, 30 pages, I don't know how long, but to be able to do that, I can't even just imagine, even if it was in one set time period, handwriting all of that and actually creating that piece, like physically, let alone mentally in the imagination.
Exactly. And was it Mark Twain who wrote maybe the first novel in America on a typewriter? Is that
that's a good trick.
Is that
I don't
a
know.
possibility? That
could
may be
be
possible. He was apparently, he loved innovation, right? So he's one of the early adopters of technology, and typewriters were a great technology.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look that
Yeah, look that
fact
up.
up.
Yes, I hope our listeners will check in on their Google browser and see if I'm right about that, or if I'm not right, who was the first person to write a novel on a typewriter? Or let's see, Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road on a bunch of sheets of something or other, not regular paper, and then he taped it together, so it was like a reel.
It's like a big scroll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was stream of consciousness, which was there.
Yeah.
I think you probably are held to lesser standards or different standards if it's stream of consciousness.
I think so. Yeah, and
Yeah.
once postmodernism is my sort of the time period that I really enjoy, and that's where a lot of the established literary conventions started to be thrown out the window and blatantly and deliberately broken, like breaking the fourth wall, the author inserting himself into a novel or talking to the reader. And I really like that stuff. I haven't read On the Road, though. I don't know why I haven't picked that one up.
Oh, well, you have to put it on your list, and it's short, and, I think he also wrote it in about 3 days. So, you can speed read your way through it, if only to experience what must have been going on between his ears as he was thinking about that story and committing it to writing. It's a great novel. Yeah.
I like the excitement is going to have me go pick that up. And that actually reminded me of what the last book I actually read was. It was called Gonzo Girl, not Gone Girl, which I also read. Gonzo Girl, and it was, I can't remember the author's name, but she spent time as Hunter S. Thompson's assistant. This is another interesting thing about the sort of fiction versus nonfiction. It's made up the characters' names are made up, but it's totally based on her time. So it's fiction. I wonder why she chose to make it a fiction piece. Like the protagonist doesn't have her name, but essentially it's her. And I wondered if that was for legal reasons, so that nobody could sue her for defamation or libel or slander or whatever it is, or if it was just so that she's writing on something that happened, I think it was 30 years ago, and she doesn't want to say, well, yeah, it happened exactly like that. It's more, this was sort of an overview of what working with Hunter S. Thompson was like. And Kerouac made me think of Hunter.
Well, and Kerouac is definitely recording his cross-country road trip. I mean, so of course he's drawing it from his own experience. I was friends with a writer named Douglas Wolfe, who's now dead, died maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And he was an extraordinary writer of fiction. But when I would read his fiction, I was reading stories that I had experienced or I had heard directly from him about experiences he had had. So, I mean, what is the fourth wall? You said they broke the fourth wall. So what are the first three walls? Because in the case of my friend Douglas, it was a lot like reading a letter in a way. It obviously much more artistic and creative, but it was the facts of the experience that I knew about.
I don't know where that phrase originates. I imagine it's from theater, where in a theater you have the wall behind the actors and the walls to the left and right, or the wings, and then that imaginary wall between the actors and the audience. The actors pretend like there's not a bunch of people watching them, they're in the moment, and the audience pretends like they're watching something they're not involved in that action. So that fourth wall would be if an actor in the middle of a play stopped and turned to the audience and addressed someone personally, or brought the audience in somehow. And authors do that in books by mentioning the fact that you're reading a book where you're supposed to normally suspend your disbelief and go off to the land that the author's creating, and and then I'm going to decide to write this and you're going to read this, and it's jarring, but if it's done well, it can be very effective. That's Kurt Vonnegut, one of my favorite authors, and he's sort of one of the big names in postmodernism.
Or what period of time are we in now? If that was, postmodernism must have been 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Postmodern.
I've heard it called the digital age. I don't know what else. I don't know we're postmodernism.
How are they going to keep it going? Like there was Generation X and Generation Y, millennials.
And I always wonder when those names, I don't think we'll have a literary time period until 30 years from now. People will look back and go, oh, let's call that the X period. I even wonder if when postmodernism started or whatever, if someone said, oh, yes, this is the postmodern time period.
Right, and who gets credit for saying that?
And I tell my students when we talk about literary time periods, or even the development of English language, Old English, Middle English, and modern English, they can't believe that Shakespeare wrote in modern English. But it's not like on this date in 1476, everyone woke up and said, let's stop speaking Middle English and start speaking a new way, and we'll call that modern English. The dates are nice estimates, usually determined by some other historical event going on at the time that you can just kind of say, okay, well, that's what we're going to use as the starting date for this time period. Or
we have to take another break, which I'm really sorry to announce and to break off this conversation. But when we come back, let's talk about the depth of historical periodicity. What is there a word like that?
Again, I'd have to look that up.
Periodicity. That sounds good. That students bring to their reading. So we'll be right back after this message. Well, welcome back to Middlesex Moments Radio Show. With Adam Floridia teaches English here and is taught here at Middlesex for...
I would say 8-9 years, because I started off part-time. I taught high school during the day and would come and teach here at night and loved it. And then in 2010, ran the Learning Center here for 2 years and still taught part-time. And then in 2012, was lucky enough to get a full-time English position. And so this is my third or fourth year full-time. Fourth year full-time English.
Embarking upon it. So right before the break, we were talking about students thinking back to thinking back at period to what was the start of something, or what was the etiology of something, right? That's like, where did it begin and where did language begin? So with our college students, what is your sense of their sense of periodicity? And if that's not a word, okay, we're going to have to find out what it is. But what is their timeline, their worldview of time, and how we got from X to here to today?
I would say I really haven't noticed anything jarring, because I haven't done most of the courses I teach are English 101, where it's pretty much contemporary stuff. The one class where I did teach the development of the English language from Old English to Middle English to Modern English was Brit Lit, and that was online always. I did that I think 2 or 3 times online, so I didn't get to see the confused faces or the surprises. It is in English 101 where I ask, we talk about reading difficulty, and I say, okay, how would you feel about reading Shakespeare? Oh, no. And that name, conjures horror to so many because his language is so ancient, and that's where I just throw in that aside of, well, what period do you think he wrote in? There's old, there's middle, and there's modern, and they're very surprised to find out. If that was modern, the next question is always, what was Old English like? Go find a copy of Beowulf, not the translated version you read in high school, but go read the original Beowulf and see if you can recognize even half the letters.
Yeah,
where
right.
It's much more Germanic.
Yes, it is. Vastly more. And really hard to understand, although they made a film of that not that long ago, of Beowulf. I was shocked.
I didn't think it was that bad either. I actually thought the film was decent. I was surprised. Good. Yeah, whenever anything comes out that was a book, I'd buy the movie just to at least check it out. And I think that was one that I had such low expectations for, especially with Angelina Jolie as Grendel's mom, that I was pleasantly surprised, because my expectations it could only have raised them. They couldn't have gone any lower.
Is there any longer a culture of reading Monarch Notes or Cliff Notes just to get a sense of, what's the plot line so that it helps? Or?
Yeah, but I think that's all digital now. I don't think anyone probably on their shelf has those nice little yellow packets. As I remember the Cliff Notes coming in. Now it's sparknotes.com or Pink Monkey or probably other sites that I don't know yet. And that's the toughest thing. I sent my 101 students away the other night with, they had to read A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. First I was appalled that no one had heard of it or read it, because that should be taught in high school. But anyway, and I told them, you guys are going to write a summary of this and an analysis. It's probably the most difficult reading you'll do all semester. Please don't go online. You can go online and find a million summaries of this, but I'm not grading on the content of your summary. I want to see your understanding of the difference, and I want you to actually engage with and challenge yourself to see what you can do. But I think it's all too easy to find anything you need on the internet.
So how do you detect if they've all too easily found anything they needed on the internet?
If I hate when students plagiarize or cheat. English 101, it doesn't happen as much because it's nonfiction and they're sort of an eclectic mix of articles, but English 102, which is literature and comp, we read some of the greatest short stories, the greatest poems ever written. You can find anything you need about those on the internet. And I very clear from day one, this is to encourage you to think, to engage with the ideas, to engage with the text. And if I do think someone copied work, I'll spend hours on the computer looking for. I tell them, if you can find something on the computer, so can I, and it's not worth it.
It isn't worth it. It isn't. But I think, it's interesting. Plagiarism is sort of like the one cardinal sin in American higher education, anyway, probably in world education. And among scholars, it's not right to take the work, if somebody else was developing, let's say, wireless technology and somebody else just swept in and stole it all, that's intellectual property. And that's not a good thing to do.
And I don't think they see, that's why I really try to stress this. I'm like, this is probably like the worst academic crime you can commit. Don't do it. be an automatic 0 on the assignment. You might get removed from the course. You might have to go to a disciplinary hearing. You could be removed from college. It's just not worth it. If you can't do the work, or you're not gonna, or you don't have the time, don't. Just take it on a 0 and make it up, with other work. So I think, and that's unfortunately also something I remember in high school, at least when I taught, the culture was if a student plagiarized, it was a no-no, but then they could make up that assignment or get a better grade or something. So it wasn't as serious an infraction.
And maybe that's why it's so, so prevalent in higher education, because, if you're not normed to understand that that's not how you go about your business. Yeah. So let me leap from that plagiarism, which is the dark side of the moon.
I know.
Yes. To growing up in Wallingford and becoming a reader. I mean, at what point do you think you became a teacher? How did that?
I knew I wanted to go to school for education. I originally wanted to be an elementary school teacher because I was always really good with kids. I like kids. I went to University of Maryland, go Terrapins, and again started taking English courses and really fell in love with literature and decided that I want to teach. I'm going to want to teach English, and God bless people who can teach elementary school, but so much of that is teaching the basic just life skills. It's like I'm not going to be able to have probably in-depth conversations about the allegory of Lord of the Flies in 5th grade. So I decided to major in secondary ed, and that was my goal, to come out, be a high school teacher. Had never thought about teaching college, and then I realized that even in high school it was difficult to often have good, meaningful conversations about literature in an English class. So much of it was babysitting, at least where I was. So that's why when I saw the opportunity to start working here part-time, I jumped on it and just loved it, because here I actually get to teach and share my passion. I mean, I literally get excited. I look forward to the first day of classes probably way more than most students. One, because it was a long summer with both my kids, whom I love, but it was nice to get out and have an adult conversation. And just because I love talking about books and Englishy stuff. Englishy stuff. I don't know if that's a word either.
Yeah, like with periodicity, which I'm now starting to doubt. So I'm going to go across the course of this half-hour program. We've slaughtered the English language, all in the name of celebrating the English language.
But we may have got the trivia fact of who first used a typewriter.
Maybe. Let's hope so. So what do you do besides read and teach and parent these little children who are adorable and with whom you'd like to spend every living moment of your life?
Not every moment. They need to go to bed, and I need some time to read. I don't do a whole lot. I mean, it's the stereotypical hobbies. I'm an English teacher. What do? I read in my spare time. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but my wife and I have a handful of shows, maybe like one sitcom every night or something that we'll watch. My other passion is I travel. I love to travel whenever possible. This job lends itself very nicely to that, since I have summer breaks. So we'll try to get away for a family vacation somewhere in the United States at least once a year, and then my wife and I are trying to, very lucky if we can do a European or a international. I said European because we've only gone to Europe, but this time it'll be South America. If we can do that every other year.
Yes, Machu Picchu is definitely, it's in this relatively close to this time zone, which is one of the perfect things about flying north and south instead of east and west.
That shows my complete lack of knowledge in geography too, because I couldn't believe that it's pretty close to directly south of us, where in my head it was below Mexico and Mexico's way to the west, so it had to be in a completely different time zone. I think it might actually be in the same time zone. If not, I know it's close.
It's really close, right.
So then I went and looked at the globe that I have in my study, and oh wow, I guess I should have actually looked at this sooner.
Yeah, geography is another kind of discipline that, I don't know, I hope they still teach it in elementary and secondary school, but we need to know more about the world. It's nice to know more about the world before we go to war with whatever country we suddenly learn where it's located and what its major resources were and population levels and things like that. So if you went to some place in the United States with your family recently,
we
where
went
did you go?
to San Francisco at the beginning of summer. Our domestic vacations have pretty much dovetailed with where my wife or I have a conference. So she's a physician's assistant. She works in a pediatric office, and she had the big PA conference out in San Francisco. So me and the kids tagged along and had a great time.
What did you do?
A lot of going to parks. We went to the zoo. We went to any kids museum that was out there. It was the first time, I think, for me that I realized what the next 10 to 18 some odd years of my life will be like, where, wow, this is what a family vacation is like. There was not a single let's go relax at night and go have a drink at the bar down the street or something. It was, let's be in the hotel room by 7 so that the kids can go to sleep. And then we've got to stay in the hotel room, and I'll spend the next 3 hours on my laptop looking up what we're going to do next summer, which was Machu Picchu, where we won't have the kids.
Well, that's good. A little research on the future.
That was, yeah, it's like,
experiencing.
this is the vacation we dream of without the kids.
Yeah. But, one thing, I mean, there are an infinite number of great things about little kids, but one is that you get to see the world through their eyes. So maybe as an adult you wouldn't think, oh, I want to go to a children's museum, but
And there was a museum out there. I wished, my wife was in a conference during the morning. I want to say it was in the Imagination Exploratorium, maybe,
or Imaginarium.
It was something along
like
those lines, and it was probably the best museum I've ever been to. It would have been I would have gone there with my friends for my birthday. Like it was so many fun interactive things, and then watching my son enjoy it was just magical.
Yeah. We're better people for having children and seeing the world through their eyes. Unfortunately, we have drawn to the end of this program, so I want to thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I encourage anybody in the listening audience who would love to connect with somebody who loves literature or maybe study with Adam Floridia to check out mxcc.edu and see the courses you teach, or just send you an email and strike up a conversation. In the meanwhile, if you're interested in Middlesex Community College just in general, again, mxcc.edu, we have a really terrific website. We have a newsletter that we send out. You can sign up for that, and I invite you to take a look and come over to the campus in Middletown anytime you'd like, or to visit us in Meriden. So this is Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, thanking you all for joining us today and wishing you all a very good day.